All right, all right. Welcome. I'm Mike Gaston, and this is The Currency, America's favorite live podcast. I can't say America's because we have viewers and listeners all over the world. Welcome to all my friends. Glad to have you along today. This is episode number 53 of the podcast. We're going to talk today a little bit about the Twitter hack that happened this week. Kind of big news. Actually, I should say since it's Sunday, I should say happened last week. I guess Sunday historically has been the first day of the week, although us working slobs get used to Monday being the first day. But welcome. Glad to have you guys along. My name is Mike Gaston. If you are listening to this after it viewed live, you can join the fun. Just jump in to YouTube, look for my channel, just look for Mike Gaston. We do this thing often once a week. We're going to get into more of a regular schedule. I keep threatening to make this thing a respectable regular podcast. We'll get there, but it is Sunday at 3 p.m. right now, and I'm really excited to have everybody along. Looks like we've got a handful of people joining. George, welcome from Austria. How are things going there, my friend? Guys, I want to talk a little bit about this Twitter hack. I think it's really fascinating. Now, the thing is, I don't know if you saw the news. I'll just cover it real quick, but essentially Twitter got hacked, and what happened was some people got in and got control of a number of high-profile accounts. I think like 130 high-profile accounts. Now, these are people like Bill Gates, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and the like. And there were a few kind of oddball, like some YouTubers that got hacked as well, but a lot of really high-profile folks. Interestingly, President Trump did not get hacked in this recent effort. But what happened was that whoever got in took over these accounts and then sent out messages saying, it's kind of funny. And I remember seeing some of these messages at the time. People were retweeting them, and I was thinking, what the heck is this? But like a Barack Obama saying something to the effect of, if you send me 1,000 Bitcoin, I will double it. I'll send you 2,000 Bitcoin back. I mean, they were just ridiculous. Elon Musk, a number of people, well-known, big personalities, got sucked into this thing. And it was kind of funny. Like, I remember seeing some of these tweets and thinking, what? That's just so weird. And I thought that, like, it didn't occur to me it was a hack. It was just almost like, why would he do that? Why would Obama do that? It just seems so strange. Now, here's the thing. I'm not a Twitter aficionado. I used to be big on Twitter, not meaning I was a big person, but I was big into Twitter many years ago, like a lot of years ago. I had a few thousand followers, and I ended up nuking the account. I got so frustrated with it, I nuked the account, and then I come back with like a dog with his tail between his legs and start another account. So now I've got a few hundred, and some of you folks follow me there, which I really appreciate. But yeah, I think George just chimed in. He said Trump's password would have been easy. It's Covfefe. That's great, George. I think the Covfefe tweet was like one of the best tweets. It was the beginning of his presidency, wasn't it? Was that back in 2016? President Trump has given us gold. Whether you like the guy or not, he's given us a lot of gold over the years. We really owe him a debt of gratitude. Now, of course, that's not what you see out there. You see a lot of hostility, but boy, Trump knows how to make it fun, I guess. But yeah, his password's Covfefe. That would be pretty funny, actually, if that were the case. But yeah, so you saw these like high-profile accounts tweeting out, variations of this idea that if you give me 1,000 Bitcoin, I'll give you 2,000 back. And it looks like a number of people fell for it. I think over 400 people supposedly fell for this and sent Bitcoin worth about, I want to say 120,000 was one of the numbers. I've heard somebody say almost $250,000 worth. It depends what report you look at, but it sounds like about 120. Like the hackers got about $120,000 worth of Bitcoin out of people, and it's really fascinating. So, I don't want to get so much into the mechanics of what happened, but I want to talk about, for me, what this means. Like why should we care about this? What does this mean for us? And what's interesting, at least to me, what's interesting about this? Now, here's the thing. I don't know how many of you folks are on Twitter. I loved Twitter back in the day. I really loved it. And what I found, though, over time was that it just got more and more noisy. Now, each of these social media platforms Twitter, Facebook, even Instagram now. They've been changing, which Facebook owns. They've been changing the way that they surface information to you. You know, back in the day, you signed up for an account, you followed a bunch of your friends, they followed you back. You found some interesting voices out in the wilderness, like a voice crying out in the wilderness, like John the Baptist. You found these interesting voices, you followed these people. Sometimes they'd follow you back. In the early days, it was just kind of a really cool community. And then when you looked at your timeline, whether it was Facebook, whether it was Twitter, you would see in chronological order the conversations taking place. And it was fun. It was like you could actually be part of this. You could jump in, you could comment, make a clever, snarky remark, say something witty or funny. People would comment back, people would share it. It was just a lot of fun. And yeah, like anything, you always had your element. You always had people that just, were jerks or were there to just muddy up the waters or make people cry. I mean, you get trolls. Mankind has had trolls since the beginning of time. That's not something new to the internet. The internet just gives people agency. It gives these trolls the ability to do more with it. By the way, George says that Covfefe came out May 31st, 2017. Thank you for the research, George. That's great. May 31st, 2017, we were given the gift of Covfefe. And Donald Trump's Twitter has not stopped since. But before they changed the algorithms, before they changed the way these platforms work, you would just enjoy the conversations in chronological order. And the platform would do nothing to weed out anything. It would do nothing to try to show you content that it thought you wanted to hear or see. It just showed you everything. And it was up to you to kind of skim your timeline. And you have to get good at it. Like some of the stuff you'd skim and go, I don't care about that. Other stuff you go, oh, wait a minute, this is interesting to me. And you'd have that thing rolling in the background. I used to use TweetDeck back in the day. I don't even know if that program works. It was pretty cool at the time. You could use a bunch of feeds going. You could do your follow list and so on. But there's been a big shift. I mean, these firms have been, first they're trying to figure out how do we monetize? They've got this huge audience. We've got this huge audience, millions and millions of people. How do we monetize? And following up quickly behind that monetization question is, okay, well, how do we optimize the experience? Now, when they say optimize the experience, they're not talking about optimizing in the sense that they want to create the most enjoyable experience or the best experience. See, what you and I would say is optimized is different than what they would say is optimized. Optimization for a social media platform means how do we keep them on the platform as long as possible? Optimization has nothing to do with your happiness, nothing to do with your fulfillment, nothing to do with enriching your life, nothing to do with giving you good information, nothing to do with any type of satisfaction. Optimization is how do we keep you hooked as long as possible. It's like the drug dealer. The drug dealer is optimizing. They're like saying, okay, how do I get this person to stay hooked on this drug? I want them coming back. I want them coming back. I want to get every nickel out of their pocket I can. I want to own their life. I mean, that's really what happens. And that's really what optimization means for a social media platform. It's not, we got to get past this. We've got this naivete about being consumers. We've told that consumption and being a consumer is virtuous. Like this is a good thing to be a consumer. And that we're the most important thing. Everybody cares about us. They care about our privacy. They care about our happiness. They care about our fulfillment. They care that our lives are as great as possible because that's what we've been told all these years. Now, there are a lot of companies out there that is what they care about. That's totally what they care about. But there are a number of organizations out there, social media platforms, media companies, all kinds of companies. It doesn't have to be just digital tech. That they're in it for them. And this goes back to Peter Drucker back in the day said that the primary purpose of a for-profit business is to make profit. It's to make profit. That's its mission. It's got to make money. And I would disagree with that, actually. I think that money is a fantastic aspect of what these businesses do, but I think there's more going on, especially when you're talking about private industry, and that's a whole nother discussion. But we're talking about these big tech platforms. What we're hearing is optimization. And to us, that means they're trying to optimize my experience. They're trying to make it better for me. What they're really doing is optimizing it for their shareholders. They're optimizing it for their advertisers. and they are optimizing it for their balance sheet. That's what they're doing. And anything less or anything more than that is a lie. It's just a lie. And so what happens when they optimize is they're taking their platform and they're trying to figure out ways to keep you and I on the platform as long as possible. Now, you would argue, well, that just means that they're going to make it as nice as possible so that I want to stay on it. And you would be, reasonable for thinking that. But the fact is, that's not necessarily what's going on with these social media platforms. By the way, if you're just joining the podcast, give me a shout out in the comments. I'd like to say hi, see who's taking part today in the discussion. We're just talking a little bit about social media platforms. We're talking about the Twitter hack, and I'm talking about this concept of the platforms being optimized. Back in the day, the platforms kind of ran just chronologically. You had a bunch of people you were following, they followed you, and your stream was just a chronological serving up of the content, the discussions that were going on, and you just skim and consume as you found stuff that was interesting. Now, these platforms are optimized. And what I'm saying is that the optimization isn't for us, although we mistakenly hear it as, oh, they're optimizing for me. They want to make it better for me. But you go to platforms like Twitter, you go to platforms like Facebook, and they're horrible. The interface is clean, the buttons look nice, it's all styled. The colors, the aesthetic is fine, the UX is okay. You could argue sometimes these UXs get a little bit messy and hard to deal with, the user interface, the user experience, but ultimately, it's not about the interface itself, it's about the way content's served up, and it's a horrible experience. And it's, they're trying to say, well, gee, we're trying to weed things out because there's so much noise on the platform. We want to make it easier for you. See, if they really cared about that, they would give you the tools to set up your own filters, to set up your own views so that you could go through and view and filter as you saw fit. But they don't do that. See, they create algorithms that serve up certain content to you. So, I stopped using Facebook. I have it. I've said this before. I use it for my clients, for advertising and so on. But I stopped using Facebook because I might have a few hundred friends on Facebook, but it only shows me like 10 at the most, their content. And, that's fine. I want to see those 10 people, but I want to see more than just those 10 people. And there are whole other conversations, whole other groups that you just miss out on. It's just not fun anymore because the algorithm is controlling your experience. And I'm a human being. I have quite a bit of agency. I have quite a bit of capability. I've got enough horsepower between these two ears to figure out the conversations that I want to be a part of and the ones that I don't want to be a part of. I'm not a butterfly or a snowflake. I don't have thin skin. If I don't like a discussion, I can mute somebody. I can dump them as a friend. I don't have to have them I've done that before. Back at the election in 2016, there were people that were just so like one side or the other to the point where it was just like one note. It was just a one note ban, like over and over and over again, to the point where you couldn't have a conversation. They didn't have anything else going on in their life. Trump won and half the people are just furious and everything. Like people that never talked politics their whole life just became all politics all the time. And for me, I'm like, I'm not interested. I hardly see you in real life. I hope the best for you, but I'll catch you later because I'm just not interested. So fast forward to today, and these social media platforms for me have been ruined. And I think Twitter's a big one. Twitter's experience isn't great. And it's not just because there's a bunch of political and journalistic bots on there, and there's a lot of screaming. There is a lot of that. But I think that Twitter, the way that it surfaces information every day on my Twitter, and this isn't going to be a rant against Twitter. I'm just kind of queuing up here to where we're going. But I don't know about you, and I've looked at these settings. I can't figure it out. Call me a boomer. Call me whatever you want. I'm a Gen Xer. Call me whatever you want. I've looked at the settings every day on my iPhone. I get notifications from Twitter. Oh, you've got 2 notifications. I go in there, and by the way, Pians was 0. How's it going, man? He just said, "Hey, Mike." I'll put this up on the screen. Hey, Mike. YouTube didn't recommend the live stream, yet here I am. Fight the power. That's right, bro. Fight the power. Speak truth to power. We got to stand in solidarity here on the currency. Thanks. I'm glad you're here, buddy. I appreciate it. But every day on my iPhone, I look at social media, and Twitter says, "Oh, there's notifications." I got the little red, little red dot with the number 2 or 5 or whatever. I jump in real quick, and none of them are notifications for me. None of them are, hey, somebody mentioned you, somebody retweeted you. I mean, that happens. But every day, Twitter just randomly chooses content and then gives me an alert. And I've tried to figure out, how do you turn that off? Because I don't want to see that. I only want to know when people are mentioning me and so on. When I get a direct message, when they've mentioned me, when they've at me or whatever, I want to know that. Otherwise, I don't give a rat's rear end, about here's a so-and-so just posted a picture that you might be interested in. The funny thing is, Twitter will surface users that I don't even follow. Like, they'll give me some guy who's posted a picture of, the latest storm in his area. It's like, well, it has nothing to do with me. I don't want to see it. And so I'm just to the point with Twitter makes you bitter. That's right, George. It certainly does. So I'm just at the point where it's like the user experience is not very good. So why am I bringing all this up? For me, I'm just saying, look, Twitter, I've kind of, like, I have it. I check in once in a while. Like I said, some of you guys follow me there. From time to time, I say to myself, I should do more with Twitter. It's kind of fun when you do connect with people and have some back and forth. I like that. But I don't really use it that much. And when I looked at the response, if you look at the response to this recent hack that happened just a few days ago, I think it happened on the 17th. I could be wrong. Today's the 19th. Maybe it happened on the 15th. I don't remember, but it happened last week. Huge outcry from the media. I mean, the media was really upset, and I've got a theory on that. But the media, if you look at the media stories, and not just in America, but just across the globe, the media stories are really like they were hot and bothered about this. This was a big deal. The security of the world. They're saying, "Oh my God, politicians are using Twitter to give, to send out information on new policies and laws. What if somebody hacks a Twitter account of a politician and says, they're launching nukes at Russia, and then Russia thinks it's real and they launch nukes? I mean, like, they're terrified. And I think one of the reasons that the journos are really wound up about Twitter is, this is where they get most of their information. Twitter really has become the land of journalists, media personalities, writers, content creators. Like, Twitter is the place for political and otherwise news-related stuff. And I think what's happened is these journalists are crapping their pants because they're like, look, if this stuff can be hacked, if Barack Obama's account could be hacked, how can I trust anything? And they're feeling this way because this is where they get their information. This is where journalists get their information. They're not doing research anymore. They're not doing any investigative journalism. They're on Twitter and they're following other folks that are like-minded to them, and they're following their kind of enemies, if you will, and they're just looking for content. And once they find a thread, they report on that thread. They report on what was said. A lot of journalism, if you've noticed, has become like a gossip column in a major city. It's almost like the New York Times gossip column. The gossip columnist goes to the latest high-profile party, and then and serves up the tea on what happened in that party. So and so said this, and such happened there, and now there's a squabble between these two people. A lot of journalism has become almost like a Hollywood insider program. It's just reporting on what people said. It's not investigative. People are not doing the digging. And when someone does do the digging, that work gets buried because often the digging uncovers things that are uncomfortable. Uncomfortable for the editorial staff, uncomfortable for the ownership of the media, uncomfortable for the media properties allies, uncomfortable for the balance sheet. And so I think this idea that Twitter got hacked and that the media just kind of freaked out about the idea to them that this thing's vulnerable and that, oh my gosh, how could this happen, I think betrays something that's going on a little bit deeper. Let me just throw this up here. So Pions with Zero says, have you thought about Parler? Seems like it dovetail with a personality like yours. I'm not sure how to take that. I'm just kidding. I have checked out Parler. I checked it out. I was on a client work site about a month ago. One of the folks at the client work site said, hey, have you checked out Parler? Now, my wife had told me about it about a month or two ago. I never gave it a thought. I know it's kind of a conservative, or I don't know if the founders of Parler are conservative, but conservatives who were kind of flocking to it like, hey, this could be a place for us. I checked it out. What I didn't like about it was just that it's just chock full of advertising. Like, the interface is pretty painful. Now I understand early software, you expect a little bit of awkwardness, but the interface was really awkward and painful, and it's just chock full of advertising. Like everything is an ad, and I just don't want to. I'm so tired of being advertised to. I'm willing to pay money to not see ads. I pay money so that I can listen to Spotify without ads in a higher quality. On YouTube, I do watch the ads on YouTube, but again, that's solidarity with my fellow YouTubers. I don't monetize, my channel's monetized, so I'll monetize my evergreen videos. I don't typically monetize the currency podcast episode just because I want to be free to talk about whatever I want. YouTube can get a little finicky if you monetize something that is inappropriate. You talk about violence or alcohol or whatever, then that becomes an issue. But I've looked at Parler. It didn't grab me. I think I've got it on my phone still. I gave it kind of a 10-minute glance and just thought I'm not putting the effort in here. But I have heard about a lot of people have suggested it. Africa Club guy. Hey, how's it going, man? About those so-called notifications, don't know about iPhone, but on Android, there's a drop-down to see less often. Hit that a few times, and their inane recommendations stop almost completely. Now, see, that's it. You're right. I have a friend that critiqued me. He's like, "You say absolutely too much." I was gonna say, "You're absolutely right." He is absolutely right. Don't tase me, bro. Get off me, man. Africa Club guy is right. So I could just turn off notifications for that app, and that would be easy enough to do on the iPhone. You can just do it, and boom, it's done. I kind of want to get notifications if somebody mentions me, though, because I don't check it enough. If I were on Twitter all day long, it wouldn't matter. But if one of you guys sends a shout out, I kind of want to see that so I can go, hey, what's going on? I want that notification. I just don't want Twitter slamming me all the time with BS that the algorithm thinks I want, and I absolutely don't want. It's dehumanizing. It just ruins the experience. And this is the thing, I was talking about this idea of optimization. Optimizing, they can get you hooked on something and you're not enjoying it. Have you ever been like addicted to a certain kind of food? You eat it so much after a while, you're just like putting it in your mouth, but you don't enjoy it. You ever get to the point in that bag of potato chips, it's so salty, so much greasy fat, you're watching TV, you're stuffing your face, you get to a certain point, you're like, I'm not even enjoying this anymore, but I just keep putting them in my pie hole. You ever get to that point, or am I alone on this one? Is this just a mic-only experience? But I think Twitter, Facebook, some of these can be the same way. You spend sometimes unknowingly hours because there are all these little manipulative psychological hooks and neurological tricks that they're playing to keep us on there. It doesn't mean that you're enjoying it, but they're kind of hacking our physiology, our psychology to keep us in like Flynn. So that's part of the issue I have with that. Let me just jump in over here. Pines with Zero says, imagine investigative reporters being shocked by having to go places. Yeah, when's the last time? Great point. When's the last time a journo has gone anywhere? Now, I understand they like to show up, like if there's, at least in America, if there's a big weather event, there's going to be a flood or hurricane, they like to get out on location. Often they'll just BS it. They'll stand in some parking lot. It's really windy, a little bit of water. And then, oh my gosh, we're all going to die. And there's been some really funny bits where people in the background will go swimming by, or they'll the reporters acting like they could barely walk. Oh, the wind is it's so dangerous out here, And then a couple guys will go like canoeing by just to horse around and make them look like fools. But yeah, it's rare for them to go and do anything. And I get it. Like, information comes to us now. You used to have to go to the library. You used to have to go to City Hall. You used to have to go to different places and talk to people to start shagging down stories and information. You can sit on your laptop, and I get that. Records are available. You can watch archived video footage. But where's the research? And this is the thing. The way that the media reacted to the Twitter hack betrays kind of their reliance on a platform like Twitter. Now, it's a good point. Like, what if we do look to Twitter to get certain kinds of information. We do look to it to see, well, what is Trump saying now? What are some hints on policy? And it's not just the American government. All kinds of governments are using it, et cetera. So I get it. I get there's a little bit of an issue for security and so on. But at the end of the day, how important is Twitter really? How important is Twitter to your life? How important? I just want to say hi real quick to Zoltan. Zoltan says, I have all notifications turned off on my phone. I look at it when I look at it. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, I mostly have my notifications turned off as well. I do not like being interrupted. Same on my computer. I've turned off notifications, even things like email and so on. Although I did like about 30 seconds or no, 2 minutes, sorry, before the live stream happened, somebody misdialed and called my number on the iPhone. Now, it's a Sunday afternoon. I don't usually get phone calls on a Sunday afternoon. And if you guys are like me, my iPhone rings to my laptop for FaceTime. Like it rings on all my devices for whatever reason, because I've got them all connected. And, I answer the phone real quick. Oh, wrong number, no problem. And it occurred to me, it's like, I better put my phone on Do Not Disturb because I don't want a call coming in the middle of this of a live stream of the podcast. So, yeah, a little bit crazy. But Zoltan, welcome. Pie0 says, what a hole. I said pie hole. What a hole. Yeah, the hot air just keeps coming out, doesn't it? And Pauline, just tuning in to the live stream, welcome. Glad to have you along, Pauline. Hope everything's going well for you in the north, the great North America that is Canada. She says the best is when normal people walk by in the background. I agree totally. That's just too much fun when that happens. I love seeing that happen. And she says Twitter is good at getting breaking info. I don't use it, but see it could be a good for that. Absolutely. There you go. Absolutely. I love saying that, I guess. I love Twitter for that reason, but I've just kind of given it up. A number of years ago, there's a guy named Cal Newport, and he wrote a book called Deep Work, and it was transformative for me. I want to say it was 2016. I had just, I hadn't quite yet. I was in the midst of shutting down my agency. It was the summer of 2016, and I had read this book, Deep Work, and his argument was that anybody that accomplishes anything great, and I'm just going to paraphrase this, but anybody that accomplishes anything great is engaging in deep work. People that write books, people that come up with new theories, people that really do something valuable, typically are engaging in deep work. And deep work is where you're undistracted for great blocks of time, where you can kind of go deep mentally into some topic, subject, whatever. And he talks about Freud, or Jung. I think he talks about Carl Jung. Maybe he talks about Freud, but I think Carl Jung. He talks about Teddy Roosevelt. And a bunch of others that accomplish some great things, and he attributes to their ability to focus. It's this ability to be uninterrupted and to go deep with something. And that takes mental stamina, mental energy. So his argument was like, get rid of all this social media, all these distractions. We live in a super distracted world. And if you want to be able to do something significant, if you want to be a person who can produce work of value and work of merit, you've got to train yourself. This doesn't come naturally to do deep work. You've got to block out time, and you have to be undistracted. Your mind needs time to work. It needs time to think. It needs time to rest. It needs time to focus. And coming out of that, I eliminated a lot of social media. I turned off a lot of notifications so that I was able to focus more. Now, stuff has crept back in. I'll admit it. I'm not living to the letter of the law of Cal Newport's idea, but it is a great idea, and it's, I think, very timely for the world we live in. So I'm with you. Let's see here. Pines with 0. Is Twitter so big in the U.S.? We don't use it for news here in Bat Country. In Bat Country. In the Czech Republic, you mean? Yeah, it's pretty big here. I would say a lot of people, like if you're into politics, if you're into journalism, if you're into current events, if you care about any type of, kind of movement or breaking thing, like Twitter's the place. It's really where it happens, and that's where people are getting that kind of stuff. And I think that's why the journos freaked out like they did, because if you, in fact. I forget her name, but there was an editor, a centrist editor, someone middle of the road, not a right winger and not a left winger, that was hired a few years ago by the New York Times because they said we want to have more voices than just left-leaning progressive voices here at the Times. I think that was kind of their nod to like, let's get some conservatives in here. Well, she's not a conservative; she's a centrist. Well, she just resigned recently, and she published her resignation letter. I wish I could remember her name offhand. I could look it up if we weren't in the middle of the stream. But in her resignation letter, she slams the New York Times and says, "Look, this great institution seems to be more about pleasing the Twitter crowds and is more of like an echo chamber for Twitter than it is about late breaking news or setting the standard or exposing new stories or doing investigative journalism. So we've just become kind of this organ, this extension for Twitter, and all we care about is keeping the Twitter hordes happy. And I thought, wow, how powerful is that coming from someone that's worked inside? Now, she was treated terribly from what she says and ostracized. Barry Weiss. Thank you, George. It was Barry Weiss. And I'll spell her name. It's B-A-R-I, Barry Weiss, W-E-I-S-S. Now, I understand in Austria you'd probably say Weiss, Barry Weiss, but here in America it's Barry Weiss. And you should go check out. Just read that. It'll take you 5 minutes at the most. It's a quick read, very well written, as you would expect from an editor at the New York Times that did a stint there. But very revealing as to the culture and the attitudes at the New York Times. But she was saying, we're marching to Twitter's drum. We seem to care more about what Twitter thinks and what Twitter dictates than what we think and what the American people want to know about. And I thought that was just really powerful. So. Yeah, Pians with Zero says, I meant so big in public life. Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I'm not exactly sure. I think I'm following you, but yes, Twitter's big in public life too. A lot of politicians on Twitter, a lot of institutions and organizations are on Twitter. I mean, a lot of information comes out of Twitter. Now, not everybody sits watching Twitter all the time, but Twitter seems to be the place where stories break. Twitter seems to be the place where the initial conversations, the dramas take place. When it comes to things like politics and news and so on. So that's that. Let's see. Pauline says, I don't have any traditional media, so I look at Facebook or Flipboard. I use Flipboard as well. I think Flipboard's a nice little app. They also kind of moderate what you see to a degree. And if you just read the Flipboard, if you just add their news module versus just picking up the news entities that you want to watch, it's pretty left-leaning. But yeah, I use Flipboard as well. And I like it that you can set up boards based on content or topics that you're interested in. So that's a good one there. Pines with Zero, provided a lot of my work time is leading teams. How does the book propose I reconcile that with deep work? So I think as far as your role as a manager, managing people and leading teams, I guess what his argument is, it's really a lifestyle. It doesn't necessarily have to be during your work hours, and that is, I think the corporate life is a life of disruption, interruption, reacting to circumstances, meetings, your time is not always your own. But I think his argument is, like, even if you do that, like he works at a university, he's a college, I don't know if he's a professor, but he works at a university. I think he does teach, but he might be like an adjunct or something. And I forget which one. It might be at Notre Dame. No, George. Oh, jeepers! I can't remember. What's in D.C.? There's a Catholic university in Washington D.C. I think that's where he is. I don't think that's Notre Dame because Notre Dame's in Indiana. Boy, this is terrible. Georgetown? I don't know. Golly. Okay, Boomer. I need my meds. I can't think of stuff today. But anyway, I'm sure George will tell me. George has been great with the answers today. He's been my backup. But it's also a lifestyle. He's very big on, like, look, turn your phone off. Like, if you're going for a walk, you need time to think. So let's say Pines with Zero, you want to be working on a novel on the side, or you've got some project, a personal project. Maybe you want to write. Maybe you want to share ideas, create videos, whatever that thing is. His argument is, yeah, like, you got to do your work, but you need time. So let's say you're driving home. Don't listen to the radio. Don't listen to podcasts unless it's The Currency. I think he explicitly says The Currency is on the white list for this. But, be alone with your thoughts a little bit. Let your mind do its work. Let it do some problem solving in the background. If you sit down for an hour at your desk, get rid of all your distractions. Sit down with that piece of paper and a pen. Sit down with the laptop and do some thinking work. Dig in a little deeper. Don't multitask. Don't allow other things to interrupt you, because your mind needs time to kind of go deeper. And when you go deeper, you start to see, you're doing both your deductive work and your inductive work, and you start to synthesize ideas, come up with solutions, come up with insights. But that takes time. And that deep work could even be reading. I've found a new way of reading books that's a lot more work. It's deeper work to read, but you get so much more out of the book. And again, that's deep work. But if I'm sitting there tweeting I'm reading, I'm also checking Twitter, and I've got Spotify playing in the background. It's so hard to get anything out of that. And I think that's his argument. George to the rescue. So George says he's a science professor at Georgetown University. Yeah, Cal Newport. Highly recommend it. In fact, I was so impacted by that book, that I bought like a case. This is not an exaggeration. I bought a case. I had a ton of these books. And I think in the case, I can't remember, it was like 10 or 12 or 24. I don't remember. I was giving them out. I was giving them to employees. I was giving them to clients. I was like, to people, oh, you got to read Deep Work. My kids all got, I don't know if all my kids, I know my eldest son, Josh, got it. I don't remember if Zach got one. I think, I don't know that he was interested, but not that he rejected. I'm just trying to remember, but I gave it to everybody that I thought would appreciate it. And I talked about it to anyone that would listen. And it was really fantastic. And George, it sounds like you read it. And George is saying it's really worth a read. It is. It's just fantastic. It's easy to read. It's not, you read the book and it's not like this, I didn't know any of this. It's not fluff. I mean, it's a well-researched, well-thought-out book. He provides great examples, great case studies. But it's a great argument. I mean, if you want your life to matter, and you want to be more than a consumer, and you want to be able to go deeper, you see, we're all capable of doing deeper work. We're all capable of a heavier lift than we're currently doing. And Newport's argument is the way to do that is it's discipline over time. A lot of people will go to the gym and work out to be stronger, to be fitter, faster, healthier, to live longer. This is similar in the sense that you're working out your mental capabilities, but you've got to do it with focus. You've got to do it with regularity, and over time, you'll become stronger. So George says you bought it after I mentioned it on the live stream. Do you mean you just bought it now, or did I mention Deep Work on a previous live stream? I can't remember, but I think I may have mentioned it in a previous live stream. I think George has already read it. So let's see. Pauline says, I was going to pick up US Weekly, but I suppose I could give Deep Work a read. Yeah, I think you'll get more out of Deep Work than you will US Weekly. Well, the funny thing about Twitter and all these things, and I don't know about you guys, but there's this fear of missing out. And so George says, no, he got it about 2 months ago. So I must have mentioned it on a live stream. I forget what I talk about because I've got like 3 or 4 things that I'm keen on, and I just talk about those over and over again. But he talks about, and you guys have heard this, the fear of missing out. That was a big thing for me. Twitter creates this fear of missing out because there's always late breaking news, because there are all these dramas that happen on Twitter, because there's some great, funny moments like Covfefe and battles between famous people like Hillary telling Trump to delete his account and just all this kind of crazy stuff. You don't want to miss out. You want to be in the thick of it. You want to know when something outrageous happens. You want to know when the latest news happens. You want to be in the know. You don't want to miss out on anything. And that was a real problem for me with Twitter. It was this feeling of fear of missing out. And once I kind of detached myself, once I successfully detached myself, even though I still have an account, I just don't care about it anymore. Now, that's not to say I don't like to interact with people. If you guys would follow me on Twitter and we start having conversations there, I'm all about it. I love interacting with people. One of the reasons I love doing live streams is because we get to interact a little bit. It's just fun for me. I love that connection. But, this idea that I'm going to miss out on a news story, I don't really care. And I've been finding great things to read. It's not like I'm missing out on good reference. I used to get good stuff from Twitter, there's no question. But I've gotten savvy, as far as how to find content. Well, so that kind of brings me to why I wanted to bring all this up in the first place. Yeah, by the way, Pi and Zero, is this the thing? Deep Work, rules for focused success in a distracted world. That is absolutely it, and I would highly recommend it. And if you read it, I would love to hear a report back. Earlier, by the way, he said one problem now is the overwhelming amount of quality stuff. You can go through management-style quadrants, servant leadership, Deep Work. It seems the hard thing is choosing the correct thing to do. I agree. And I guess it also depends on what is it you're trying to accomplish. If you just want to be a great manager, I think the Deep Work book is good because I think it will give you a framework for just approaching your life and the work that you do, whether it's management work, whether it's writing, whether it's anything. On the other hand, I don't know that you can't, I think any of us can just live a better life if it's undistracted. There's just so much more as a human being to take in and to experience if we're undistracted or less distracted. So there's that. Pauline says that lucky for her, FOMO, fear of missing out, has never bothered her. Yeah, you're lucky because now I don't feel like it bothers me either. But when I was in the belly of the beast, when I was big into Twitter and some of these other, even Facebook, I remember kind of detached myself from that. I still have an account. I never use it. I use it for client work. That's about it. I felt like I was missing out. What if the gang all is going to get together? What if a bunch of people are going to have a beer and I don't know about it? What if there's a party and I don't get invited because I don't have a Twitter account, a Facebook account? But all that stuff's gone. So here's what I want to bring up. So let me back up a little bit. So the journalists, I think, and the news media freaked out about this hack because they were fearful that their source for their livelihood and their platform for molding and shaping thought in the country, in America and other countries, the West, has been compromised. And the reason, there have been Twitter hacks before, but the reason I think that this rattled them so much is this wasn't a hack where somebody cracked some passwords. What they did is the hackers convinced, Twitter says, kind of code word, they use social engineering. So the thought is that the hackers got into a Twitter Slack account, was chatting one of their employees, an employee that oversees these 130 high-value blue check accounts of Barack Obama, et cetera, and somehow convinced that person, they tricked that person, and the hackers gained access to a control panel that engineer at Twitter uses to manage those accounts. Having gained access to that control panel allowed the hackers to take control of those accounts. Now think about that. I mean, we already know that Twitter can ban people, they can mute people, they can, deactivate their account. Well, they have these control panels. They've got systems that they can control. And it allowed, once that hacker that group of hackers got control, we don't know if it's an individual or more than one, it allowed them to take over these high-value targets. So I think what freaked out the media is this idea that it wasn't just a random hack where somebody stole some passwords or used some software to figure out Barack Obama's password. But I think his password is Weather Underground. I could be wrong, but I think it's Weather Underground. But that somebody could get into the company on such a level, they could get into the company and wheedle their way in. And of course, the media's been wound up on Russia tampering with elections. We know that China's pretty aggressive. I mean, these are real. Look, I'm not one to say that Trump was in league with Russia, but let's not kid ourselves. Russia, China, North Korea, any host of other countries friendly. I would even say Israel. I mean, they're all wanting to figure out how they can push the scale one way or the other. Why wouldn't they? We do the same thing. We're always trying to figure out how to affect other countries and their elections, and they're trying to figure out how to do ours. So the idea that a company like Twitter could be compromised is scary to them. So here's why I bring all this up. Here's the question. The question is, where do you get your source of information? The opening screen here, as you were waiting for the live stream to start, was a picture of Jack Dorsey, one of the founders and the CEO of Twitter. And, we think of these platforms almost as public utilities. We think of them as kind of free space that we all own. We think of our content as ours. But behind the scenes, there are algorithms written by people, and the algorithms are slanted one way or the other. There are people like Jack Dorsey with very strong views, strong political views, strong visions for what the future should look like, strong views on how you and I should live our lives. And then you have all the actors. I don't mean actors as in movie actors. I mean actors, people acting on Twitter, the media personalities, the journalists, and the news breakers, the newsmakers, and so on. And everybody's got an agenda. So the thing is, if we're all looking to a place like Twitter or like Facebook or even a Flipboard, not to pick on Pauline, I use Flipboard, like I said, all the time. If we're looking to these platforms for our information, what we're really saying is we're allowing them to be our window on the world. Just like the journalists freak out because Twitter is their main source of information. It's how they do their job now. It's what they look to. It's the standard. And we're also looking to these platforms like Twitter for our information. If we're doing that, we're kind of getting a very specific view of the world that may or may not be true. And I just wondered, we used to be able to just read a newspaper and then go on with our lives and not think twice about it. But I think as individuals, that if you want to live life on your own terms, now some people don't care. Some people just want to consume and feel pleasure on one level or another. They want to have a nice beer. They want to go for a joyride on the lake. They want to spend an evening with a loved one. They just want things that give them pleasure. And I'm all for that. I enjoy those kinds of things. But if you want to live life on your own terms, you have to understand the environment that you're in. This goes for entrepreneurs. This goes for politicians. This goes for clergy. This goes for teachers. This goes for medical professionals. If you want to live life on your own terms, this goes for people in the trades. This goes for parents. This goes for children. You have to understand the environment that you're in. And the environment that you and I are in is not a peaceable, amenable environment. The interface, the user interface to the environment, I'm kind of taking this as a metaphor now. The Twitter user face might be pleasant. The colors might be pleasant, and the little pictures might be pleasant, and it might hook us and give us a little bit of a dopamine hit. But at the end of the day, that environment is actually hostile. And I think that's the same about life. We might look around, and there might be a lot of pleasant things. Now, we can see some unpleasant things lately in our world, but it might be pleasant. The people might have smiles on their faces. The news people might seem very serious, very concerned about you, and the entertainers might be very entertaining and very funny. I'm reminded of like the Daily Show. Who's the South African kid? I should know this, having lived in South Africa and being married to a South African. The South African kid who's taken over the Daily Show. He's a funny kid. He's got a funny look on his face. He's easygoing. Seems like a nice guy. But that's a facade. I'm not saying that he's not a nice guy in real life, but he has an agenda. He has something that he cares about. John Oliver is a famous one for agenda. I mean, this guy, he's just got a chip on his shoulder. If anything isn't progressive, boy, he just thinks that you're an idiot if you don't think like he does. But it's all wrapped in humor. And I think with Twitter, and I think in the world we live in, Trevor Noah, George, you get the gold star today, man. Trevor Noah, thank you so much. George, we're putting you on the payroll. Have your people get in touch. We'll get a wire transfer set up. And by the way, I have to follow up from the last podcast. I have not, surprisingly, heard from Big Boy yet. I've checked my messages. I've tried to leave the phone line open in case they got in touch, but alas, I have not checked my spam folder and email. I haven't done that in a while. I should probably troll through that. Who knows? Maybe I got a call from the fine people at Big Boy. But I have not secured that contract as of yet. Day number 7. We should have an ongoing count. Day number 732. Still no call from Big Boy. Anyway, you're the Jamie of this podcast. You are. I'm kind of the old Joe Rogan. Although I think Joe's similar age to me. Boy, that guy's fit. Isn't he fit? We're both bald. And we're both devilishly good looking. But yeah, Joe's got bigger biceps and a bigger bank account. And God bless him. He deserves it. He's worked hard for his success. I really respect what Joe's built. But the question for us, I think, is where are we getting our information? Where are we getting our news? And not just news information, but like how do we learn? How do we build our view of the world around us? And I think it calls into question what we consume. What kinds of information do we consume? Are we postmoderns who believe that there is no truth, that we all make our own truth, that our truth is our perception, your truth is your truth, my truth is mine? Do we all believe that there's necessary truth, that there's absolutely things that are true? For me, my kind of grounding point is the truth of Christ. I've told you guys this before. I like to read scripture. I've spent a lot of time as a young guy studying that, and I try to be sensitive to hearing from God on things, but I try to live by principles that I understand to be true based on God and his kingdom. So I'm not perfect, and even you guys on this podcast can probably point out ways in that I've not been perfect publicly. And if you knew me in person, you'd be able to point out a lot more. And I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not proud to be imperfect, but I know being imperfect just makes me like everybody else. There's no shame in being imperfect. But for all of us, for me, that's my grounding. It's not meaning that every day I get up and read my Bible because I don't know how to approach the world today. It's more of I have a philosophical, metaphysical view. I have a structure, a framework within which I'm able to understand the world around me. I refuse to let Twitter, I refuse to let CNN, I refuse to let Fox News or even President Trump dictate how I think about things or how I view the world. And my encouragement for you, and I'm sure a lot of you guys do this already, my encouragement for you is to just step back and think about it a little bit. Like, where do I get my information from? What things do I take for granted? That's one of the biggest things that happens right now is we make a lot of assumptions. We take certain things for granted. We just kind of use this information as a leaping point, but we don't stop and think for a moment and go, okay, well, why do I think this? I'm not asking you to rethink your positions on life. I'm not asking you to rethink your positions on religion or politics. I don't mean that, but like as you're consuming stories, as you're consuming information, as we're on these platforms, and it sounds like a lot of us on this podcast, aren't necessarily, but as we're on these platforms and consuming information, media, even entertainment, we have to be kind of thinking and mature about understanding that this is coming through a filter. It's being filtered before we get it, and then we're applying our own filters unthinkingly to it. And you can't escape that. We're all human beings. But I think we just kind of take for granted that this, it's on the internet. It must be true. It's on the news media. It must be true. And I think this is one of the reasons that kind of Twitterati freaked out about this hack, because it kind of calls into question the veracity and the how much we can trust what we see on Twitter. Now, we've all known you can't trust everything on the internet. You get an email, you can't necessarily trust it. I'm a Nigerian prince, and my uncle has buried $30 million. He was a military general, but my family was pushed out of control, power. And if you would help me, and we get those things. We're like, okay, that's BS. But there are other things that are a little bit more subtle, other things that are designed to optimize us, things that are designed to optimize the way that we respond, the way that we react, the way that we think and feel about the information being presented. They're very savvy. Look, scientists are getting better and better, and marketers, media, entertainers, and so on, content creators, they're using these tricks more and more. And I think it behooves us, it's kind of like buyer beware. Just be aware, like, where do you get your information from? I think guys and gals that are on this, listening to this podcast, that kind of consume my content, not that I'm so great, but I think the people I've noticed that kind of coalesce around some of my content tend to be more independent thinkers, and they want to live life on their own terms. And that's one of the big things for this channel. I've discovering, the more I do with my YouTube channel, the more I'm doing with this podcast and some of the other content like writing that I'm creating, it's really about how do you live life on your own terms. Now, a lot of that could be entrepreneurship, it could be wealth creation, but it's like, how do you and I live life on our own terms? How do we live as free people in a free world? How do we create value? How do we solve problems? How do we realize and maximize who we are, just internally for ourselves, but also externally for the world around us, those that we love, those that we are in community with? And that's what I'm really interested in, and hopefully you guys are as well. So that's that. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to end the podcast, but I'm going to continue the live stream for a little bit to do some Q&A and just chat a little bit. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys. I'm glad to have you along. This is the Currency Podcast. My name is Mike Gaston. I would be honored if you would subscribe and join this fine community. You can do that in a number of ways. You can go to my YouTube channel. You can subscribe there. I do these live streams regularly, and I also put out the odd video once in a while. Just go to Mike Gaston, Gastin on YouTube. You can also find this podcast anywhere that fine podcasts are provided. That would be Apple Podcasts, that would be Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, and so on. You can subscribe there. This usually gets loaded up there every Monday, so I'll live stream on Sunday, and often it'll go up the next day. Would love to have you as part of the community. Guys, if you want to get in touch, just hit me up at my website. There's a contact form there. And if you want to follow me, I am on Twitter and Instagram. I'm rarely posting content, but always into some conversations, so would be honored to catch you guys there. Guys, I love you all. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you in the next episode. All right, my YouTube friends. Now that is the end of the podcast, but we've still got some time if you want to chit chat a little bit. Let's see what's going on here. So, I got to back up. Let me back up. So Pines with Zero said, as everything, it's more distributed. You need to go to people on the bleeding edge of their discipline. Actual investigative reporters, scientists, artists, businessmen, Nietzsche for predictions. Yeah, I agree. And that's that's actually fun to do, like going through that process of trying to find people on the bleeding edge. So I've got two. There's the bleeding edge, and there's also the people that the OGs. Like, if you want to understand, so for instance, if you want to understand conservatism as a political movement, if you watch the news, you would infer from all the comments what conservatism is. Oh, it's a bunch of right-wing Nazis, a bunch of fascists, blah, blah, blah. But like if you go read the writings of Sir Edmund Burke from the 1700s, if you read, what's his name? Kirk, it's like a doorstop. It's like a 500-page book. It's called On Conservatism. It was written in the 80s. George, I need your help, buddy. It's like something Kirk. I'm going to go blank. Anyway, you go, and he did a survey. This guy did a survey of all the conservative thinkers and writers throughout, starting with Burke all the way through into the I want to say the 70s, maybe not even that far. And he distills all their work, and it's just fantastic. If you go back to the original sources, you learn so much. So I would agree with you, Pi, because I think really the opportunity is if we're good at ferreting out the sources where things come from, whether it's the bleeding edge, the new stuff, or the kind of core foundational stuff, there's so much to learn. And what happens is we become more significant. We become more capable because we own that content. That's not just like some guy tweeted an article, I skimmed the headlines, now I'm in an outrage, now I'm tweeting out to everybody else how upset I am about these terrible people doing this terrible thing. It's like you go a little deeper, you understand what's really happening. Or you spend some time looking at the core of like the historical, intellectual history of a certain movement of thought or ideas. You have so much more context with which to understand the current circumstances that you're in. And I just think that's a fantastic way to live. It's so much more fulfilling. It takes work, but you know what? It's like making, you can go to the store and buy pre-bought food and pre-made food. And there's nothing wrong with that. We all do it from time to time. You go buy some frozen dinner, or you go to the store now, they might make, some hot meals at the nicer supermarkets. If you're working, you bring it home. It's fine. But if you take the time to make that food yourself by hand, if you're a relatively competent person in the kitchen, competent cook, it's always better, but it takes work. But I think the quality of life and the experience is better. And I think that's the balance. I'm not saying that everything in life has to be made from scratch. I don't want to have to knit my own clothes. I want to go to somebody else and have them make the clothing for me. Or just buy stuff off the rack. But there is something to be said for spending the time to get a better quality consumption content. And so then there's more of a balance between the work and the consumption. It's not just consumption. You're not just getting fat. You're working hard, you're consuming great stuff, and there's a balance there. And I think we become better people for it. So Pines with Zero says, I think Tim Minchin is relevant now. Quote, if you open your mind too much, your brain will fall out. We haven't yet had the polar opposite of having too little information before. Having too much is new. That's a really great point. I've wondered at times too, like I've done these experiments. I used to be a sales guy when I was a young kid, had a full head of hair. It was a dark color, and I was actually pretty darn good at it. I've always been a good sales guy throughout my career, if I do say so myself. But I used to listen to a lot of talk radio. I listened to like Rush Limbaugh or whatever was on. And I found myself like getting, like I was always angry and wound up. And eventually I said, well, I'll just try something. Let me just turn this off. Maybe I'll listen to a book on tape or, just whatever. This is before podcasts and all that jazz. And I was just a happier person. But initially I was worried, like if I don't listen every day, I might miss out on what's going on. And I found like I didn't need to know. I tell people now, like I don't watch the news every day. I don't always check the news. And people are like, yeah, but what if? I'm like, yeah, what if? I'll know, what's important, I'll know what's important. If the Russian troops show up in downtown Rochester, I'm going to be marching on my town. I think I'll know about it. I don't think I need to watch the news to know about that. But you know what? If some stupid politician wrote some type of fake hate letter to themselves, this true news story happened recently, and mailed it to themselves to say, oh my gosh, these right-wingers are so horrible, look at this letter I got. I don't need to know about that. My life is fine not knowing about that. I'm not wanting to live in ignorance. I just don't need to know every minute of every day. I find out anyway over time. So that's that. George says he likes that quote from Tim Minchin. I agree. Pions of Zero says, "Thanks, Jamie. So anyway, about DMT, that's so true. Uh, and I got to imagine so many people want to recreate that Joe Rogan experience. I just think that's funny. I do want to start having guests, by the way, guys. I'll let you know. I mean, it's not going to always be guests, but I think now that we're in this live stream world, it'd be fun to have some guests on. And one of the things I'm trying to figure out is, let's say we start doing Sundays at 3:00. I've got to figure out a time that works. Let's say I'm doing Eastern Standard 3:00. If I have guests, I've got to find guests that are willing and able to do it live at a certain time. So I've got to figure that piece out, but I thought it'd be fun to start bringing some guests on and have a bit of a conversation. I am not going to try to recreate Joe Rogan. We might talk about space aliens someday, but that's not my bag. There's only one Joe, and there's only one Mike, and I want to do Mike as best I can. Afro Club guy says, there's an old book, How to Lie with Statistics. Yeah, I remember that title. I was exposed to it long ago, and it taught me that I have to think about everything I consume. That was transformative for me. Yeah, that's really good. You know, a lot of people, I wish people understood that, like how easy it is to manipulate statistics, and how easy it is also to not treat statistics correctly. A lot of these journalists will see a report, they see a quick statistic, and they just yank that statistic out of context and then create an article around it. You know, that, oh my gosh, it's proven now that oatmeal will cause liver cancer. Like and 4 out of 5, blah, blah, and they just run with it. I'm making that up. They're not really trained to understand statistics very well. Now, sometimes they want to manipulate them, but I think a lot of times it's just ignorance. I don't think that they're trying to lie to us. I think sometimes they just are ignorant and lazy and run with a story because it's sensational, and then we all end up suffering for it. Pines with Zero, yeah, I saw Verdict with Ted Cruz and found out he's more of a Kevin from The Office lookalike. The guy has a brain. Never knew. Yeah, Cruz is a smart guy. Ted Cruz is a smart guy. He never really made it. I think part of it is his honestly, I think part of it was his voice. He has a very nasally voice, and he almost sounds like he's, griping all the time. But and I think Trump blew up everybody. He just changed the game. Cruz was still playing the classic political game, clean cut, nice guy, well spoken, very kind of managed the way his appearance was, et cetera. And Trump came in and just blew that up, and I don't think anybody knew how to deal with it. It's the whole OODA loop. Trump got inside everybody else's loop. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go check out my video on the OODA loop, and you'll get an idea. All right, Afro Club. Also, like what you said about scripture, it's important what you bring to the news or media or even books you read. 100%. And you guys know where I'm coming from. I understand not everybody here is a Christian. I would love for everyone to become one, but I'm not trying to evangelize. But I think you've got to bring something of substance. You have to bring your truth to the table. I don't mean yours like, well, my truth versus, you've got to bring truth, necessary truth, objective truth to the table so that you can understand how to manage and interpret and process and contextualize the information that comes. And I fear, like, too many people are, and this goes back to the open mind, too many people are just like a sieve. They're not discriminating in what they consume. They just consume anything. I'm not uptight. Like I'll watch different programs. I'm not, somebody swears, I swear sometimes and so on. Like I'm not prudish about this stuff, but on the other hand, there's certain stuff I just don't want to put in me. I don't want it. And that's just how I am. So, okay. George says, last year I didn't read or listen to any news for about 6 months. It was super relaxing. Oh, that's pretty cool, George. What prompted that? And at the end of that, did you kind of resolve? Did that change anything for you, or is it just like a really good experiment? Like I'd be curious to learn a little bit more. So if you've got a minute in the comments, let me know. Pauline says the Catholic take on this problem is using your time wisely and opening yourself up to that things are beneficial. Oh, so opening yourself up to things that are beneficial to you. Yeah, I guess it's like, again, it's being discriminating about what you consume, right? It's like use your time wisely. So don't sit letting Twitter optimize you for them. And then when you use your time wisely, be discriminating about opening yourself up to things. What are you going to, open up yourself to things that are good? And it doesn't always have to be consumption. I mean, you could be a parent, like spending that time with your children. That's how can you go wrong? It's wholesome time. So it's not always about what you consume. It's also what we're doing. But yes. Afro Club guy saying to pi ends with 0. Well, yes, there's a saying, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. That's great. George says, we have to get you on the JRE. Jamie will have to talk to Jamie, I guess. That'd be great. Well, I'll tell you what, this will never happen, but if I ever got onto Joe Rogan, that would mean for me that I've made it. It's not a personal goal. I don't have the goal of getting on Joe Rogan. But my goodness, if I got invited onto that show, I don't even know what I would talk about. What would Joe, because you got to bring something crazy. Now, you guys are like, yeah, dude, you're crazy. But you have to be a little out there for Joe, I think, for it to be interesting. Because Joe just kind of like asks questions. He's like, yeah, and the guests will bring, like I was watching somebody, they were talking about yesterday, Skinwalker Ranch. This guy had done some research into Skinwalker Ranch. I don't know if you guys have heard about this. And it was fascinating, but the guest, like Joe just asked one question and he went on for like 20 minutes nonstop about all these supernatural phenomenon. And he believes it's alien extraterrestrials and so on the Skinwalker Ranch. And it drove the family crazy. And it was like, that guy he was so out there, but it was so fascinating. And Joe didn't have to do anything. That's the beauty of Joe. I mean, Joe's got a great way about him. And I'm not saying that Joe doesn't do anything. I think Joe does a lot. He's a hardworking person, but like that guy was fascinating. And there was just something about that topic and the way he went on. It was like, Joe just had to say, wow, yeah. Do you think it was real? I mean, and the guy just kept going. It was just so good. So good. So anyway, George, if you got an in at JRE, hook me up, dude. Hook me up. Pines with 0 statistics. We either reject the assumption that we track or we don't reject it. People, it is proven. Yeah, exactly. So we reject the assumption or we don't reject. That's kind of the outcome. But then people just go, it's proven. It's a known fact. It's like this become gospel truth. It's one of Newton's laws now, scientific law. It's great stuff. George says, I listened to someone's suggestion on the Knowledge Project podcast and just did it. I'm kind of sad that I started again. Okay. I listened to someone's suggestion on the Knowledge Project. Oh, so he's saying the Knowledge Project suggested going news-free, and so you did it for that reason. Now you're sad that you started watching news again. Would you ever consider kind of going off it? Joe's way of going about things, I could punch you in the face, but I'm not gonna. It's so funny. Joe's great. Afro Club says, believe it or not, I get all my news from word of mouth. I don't check any news. If it's not big enough for someone to tell me about, I don't hear it, and I don't miss anything. Yeah, I mean, that's the fact. I mean, here's the thing. People could interpret what we're talking about saying like, oh, you shouldn't care about the world you live in. You just shut yourself off. Don't pay attention. Like, oh, you're being an irresponsible human being. I don't think at least I know for me, I'm not advocating for being irresponsible. I'm not advocating for being withdrawn or too insular or too inward focused or self-centered. I'm just saying there's so much information out there, and about 90% of it is BS anyway and manipulative. The 10%, who knows what the 10% is out there if you can find it and identify it. And the fact is, you're going to hear about this stuff anyway. You don't have to be watching CNN all the time to get your information. And honestly, if you're listening to people with some substance, if you're reading books of substance, if you're following, like Pines with 0 says, the people that are experts in their field, not media pundit experts, but like the people that are not in the spotlight, the people doing the deep work, the people putting good thinking out there, you're gonna get the kind of information you need. And I think you're going to be fine. And if there's something that you need to hear about that's more of a current or popular event, people are going to talk to you about it. Like right now, the whole Black Lives Matter thing. Unless America devolves into civil war, which could happen. Let's say that happens. Let's say America devolves into civil war. Will it have been critical that you watched every news story on Black Lives Matter if we're in a civil war? No, you're going to have bigger fish to fry in a civil war. Like I'm talking a real civil war. On the other hand, let's say it blows over. Let's say the election happens, and then all of a sudden COVID and Black Lives Matter, all stuff just kind of goes away because now the election's over and there's no political juice to get out of this thing. Then will it have mattered that you spent all this time reading it, listening to it, thinking about it, being obsessed over it? No. Now here's the thing. If you're a white person and you've got some black friends, spend some time with them. Ask them what their life is about. Spend some time just getting their thoughts. Not that you shouldn't do any research. Maybe read some books on things like social, ideological, Marxism and, race relations and all this kind of, like, do some foundational work, do some deep work so that you understand it in a way for yourself. Don't sit and listen to what some numbskull on CNN thinks about Black Lives Matter. Let's keep going here. And by the way, I'm going to just take a little sip of water. I had to turn the air conditioner off. You can see the air conditioner right here. I have a little unit in the room that I run while I'm working, and this is my office. As I mentioned before, the house does not have air conditioning. It's about 95 degrees outside right now. And for the podcast, I turned the air conditioner off because it's just too noisy. Then, of course, I've got a light, kind of blasting me over here, so a little bit of... And no, that's not a G&T, it's just water. Oh, so anyway. So let's see here. Pauline says, I scroll Flipboard a couple times a day, read a couple articles, but honestly don't have tons of time to keep up with anything. Yeah, that's the other thing. It takes a lot of time, doesn't it? And I want to be clear, I'm not saying you don't watch the news. I'm not trying to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. My whole point of today's podcast and the discussion is just be aware that this stuff is manipulative. Be thoughtful about where we're getting our information from. I like Pauline's approach. Be thoughtful about how you spend your time and do things that are good for you. That's what it boils down to. So let's see. George, Mike, BLM. Well, now we're getting into dangerous territory. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say about BLM today. In my city, so I will talk about this. So I'm in Rochester, New York, and hey, wait a minute, Neon Banana's in the house. He says, Mike's my source of news. Welcome, Neon. Yeah, thank you so much. That's great. It's a huge responsibility on my shoulders. I'm not sure if I'm worthy of it, but I'm at least good for some conversation, some intellectual sparring, maybe a little bit. But as far as BLM, kind of interesting. So in my city, in Rochester, there's a BLM-related protest. There's a protest today in Rochester. They're calling it. They're not calling it BLM. It's like Rochester Lives, or I forget. It's just some kind of subgroup here in Rochester. And what they're doing, we have a few interstates that go through. We have an interstate that goes through east to west, and it's called I-490. 490, and 490 goes right through the city. It gets you east to west, and it's a pretty popular route. So this BLM-esque group is going to march from a certain park, and they're going to get onto the interstate, and they're going to shut down the interstate. And so there's a bit of a kerfuffle because the county sheriff has been kind of coordinating to make sure that they're going to be safe and that nobody gets hurt, and yada yada. And the Republicans and the county legislators sent out a letter saying, well, we want to know more about all the safety. Like, they're kind of trying to call them out. Here's the problem I have. So people are saying, and so the sheriff responded with a public letter saying, you've all got my cell phone. I've received no phone call from you. I'm happy to discuss this stuff with you. You're just politically grandstanding, trying to score points with everybody. And but here's my thing. And I actually tweeted this. I'm like, because everyone's back and forth going, the Republicans are terrible. The sheriff is great. And it's a pretty Democrat, left-leaning town, Rochester. And I just tweeted the question in the comments, is shutting down an interstate legal? And a lot of people are like, I hope you're being sarcastic and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, for me, it's not about who's politically grandstanding and so on. Is it legal to shut down an interstate? And if it's not legal, why is the county sheriff facilitating this illegal action? His job should be to keep those roads open so that tax-paying Americans can conduct their business, their personal business, and they have freedom of movement. This is a major artery. Now, most Rochesterians are sympathetic to BLM, and if not sympathetic to BLM, they're at least sympathetic to the plight of their black neighbors. Like, I think most Rochesterians are like, look, I want a good life. I've said this before. I want a good life for my black neighbors. But I don't think shutting down the interstate's the way to go. So this is just interesting how kind of narrative is shifting. We're not even asking anymore, are these things legal? It's just like, you get a pass. Like, you're allowed to do whatever you want because you're part of these protests. And like I said earlier, just a few minutes ago, I think a lot of this stuff's just going to go away once the elections happen. Once the elections happen, it's going to go away. Now, if Trump wins, I think it's going to be crazy. Quite frankly, I don't think they're going to just back off. But so Pines with the Arrow says, just OODA us into knowing. That's so funny. That's funny. And Neon Banana says, you're worthy, mate. Well, thank you, my friend. Pauline says, Mike's going to be all our source of news when he's dictator for life. Now, see, Pauline is speaking the words of truth. This is where this is all going. Just for dictator for life, but for 10 years, maybe 20. Depends how long it takes to sort things out. It could take a little longer than 20, but I promise I'll fix everything and then I'll give it back. But I can't give it back until everything's right. It might take some time. I'm 53. Let's say I get another 30 years out of this thing, if I'm lucky. I don't come from good genes as far as longevity goes, but I've lived a little differently than some of my predecessors, so hopefully I'll get a little bit more juice out of this lemon before it's all over. But dictator for life. What a dream. The tough thing is, the old dictator for life is the other kind of saying that comes to mind is, if you want to make an omelet, you have to break a few eggs. And I just think, I think of the political prisoners. I don't think we have enough jails. Anyway, I'm not going to keep going with that train of thought. George, okay, I will get off the news until next live stream, and you guys will give me an update then. Oh my gosh. I don't know, George. I'm not telling you to go cold turkey. By the way, speaking of cold turkey, since we're off the podcast, I'm 1 week into alcohol free. I want to do 30, talk about like George was saying, you went without news for 6 months. I want to do 30 days with no booze. Now, I'm not a huge boozer, I'm not a heavy drinker, but I will have a cocktail in the evening or, when the weather's, I'll drink white wine sometimes in summer, but when the weather's a little colder, I'll have a glass or two of wine. So almost, I go through kind of fits and spurts. I might go for a week or two of having a drink every day, 1 or 2 drinks every day. Then I might go a week or two where I just hardly have a drink. But I thought it'd be kind of cool to try to test my mettle and see if I can go 30. So I'm 1 week in, and it's actually kind of interesting. I think, I'm kind of curious to see what I think at the end of the 30 days, and I might do a video on it at some point if I get there. So be curious if any of you guys have ever tried that before. I have to admit, I'm surprised at how much I'm wishing I could have a drink from time to time. So that says something. It's not hard. I'm not like, shaking, like sneaking a sip or looking at the liquor cabinet with loving ardor. But it's just interesting how many times, especially like on Friday at the end of a heavy work week, this Friday, I love to celebrate with a good drink at the end of the day, right? Make a cocktail. And it was hard not to do that. Not hard, but like it hit me. It's like, I really wish I could do that right now. So be kind of curious to see how that goes. Pines with Zero says, so Elon, tell Jamie. Okay. He also says that Pauline is OG. I think that's for saying that I'm dictator for life. George says, hail the king. Now, see, guys, you're going to give me a big head for this. I appreciate it, though. It's kind of fun. But Pines with Zero says, list of worst dictators in 2100. Stalin, Castro, Mike. How do you pronounce Tito's name? Is it... I can't remember how to pronounce his name, and you're not gonna be able to tell me. But was that Czechoslovakia or was that Yugoslavia? Can't remember. Kosciuszko? I can't remember. Anyway, fits right in. Mike fits right in. Well, worst dictators? I mean, I would like to think I would be lionized. Like, I don't want to be lumped in with Stalin. Stalin was a thief. He was an idiot. Stalin was an idiot. Have you ever read? Boy, am I just really struggling today. In the inner circle, is it the inner circle? Never mind. Boy, guys, I apologize. I'm just like low blood sugar or something. Really parody Stalin pretty badly. Africa guy, haha, with shades and a uniform, you look like that Sacha Baron Cohen dictator. I absolutely would. That's pretty funny. Good one there. Pauline, you can do it, Mike. Facing life straight up makes you resilient. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're talking about going alcohol free, obviously not becoming a world dictator, but thank you. Pines Zero, Mike, when I stopped drinking, the hockey stick was around 6 months long in the positive direction. Fully recommend. Oh, very good. And did you stick with it? I'm assuming you have. So far I've given up smoking in October. I stopped smoking cigars and pipes in October. Didn't really miss that, although every once in a while I think it'd be nice to have a pipe, but I'm kind of glad to be off the tobacco habit. And I wasn't smoking like crazy, but I like a good cigar, a good pipe. Thrilled to be off that. Gave up coffee about a month or so ago. That feels good to be off of coffee. I used to roast my own coffee. Gave up drinking tea. Now I've given up alcohol. I think I'm going to become like an altar boy or something. Like I'm just getting rid of all my bad habits. Yeah, so interesting. George, of course, posts a beer stein. Thank you for the support, George. So helpful. Oh, and that was Romania. See, George, thank you, Jamie. What country was Kosciuszko? I don't know if I'm even saying his name right. This was the Romanian guy. Okay, Ceausescuca. Ceausescuca. I don't know. Forgive me. I don't know what I'm talking about. No, not. It's the same author as the Gulag Archipelago, but it's called in the circle or the inner circle. Essentially, it's same author as Gulag Archipelago, but it's all about these scientists and engineers and so on that are political prisoners that Stalin is having work on a special project, and it kind of follows these guys. They're also in the prison system, but they're in nicer prisons, but they're still kind of bad. It just shows these different people, more intellectuals and so on, and what their lives are like, and how they kind of frustrate the government a little bit. And it just really is a great insight to the life of a political prisoner in Soviet Russia. And a lot of these guys were actually faithful. Like they get 25-year sentence for, like one guy got captured by the Germans, it was always faithful to the Bolshevik Revolution, was a true Bolshevik, but got captured in the war. And when he was freed, then they put him in prison because they're sure if he was captured, he must have helped them somehow. So we got to punish him. It was just terrible. Very, very well written. Neon Banana says, you need a drink. I absolutely do, but I'm going to hang in there. I'm going to be tough until the end, because if I quit, then I weaken my own view of myself. I've only got a few more weeks to go. Pines Zero, yeah, 1 year dry related to leaving sales. Well, good for you, man. Congratulations. That's amazing. George, I miss smoking, over 6 years off. You miss it. Okay. Fair enough. Pauline says, I need to give up coffee. Gives me headaches, but tastes so good. See, now that's the thing. Pauline, I love coffee. So drinking coffee gives you headaches, or quitting it? Because I know quitting it would give me a headache. But for me, as I've gotten older, coffee has just wreaked havoc on my digestive system. Like and I would drink it black. Then I started adding a little bit of cream to try to take the edge off. But it would create digestive pain and bloating, and just like I was miserable. But I love coffee. Like I love a really well roasted. I'm like a coffee snob, and but I had to stop drinking it, and I feel so much better. Like it's only been a month, like I said, but my body is starting to feel better, and I think the longer I'm off it, the better off I'm going to feel. So it is tough, and I think like when I quit, I've gone cold turkey, and I felt like detox sick. So I usually will ramp down. It took me about a month or so to ramp down to where I got off of it. George is first after the beer emoji. Pines with 0. And then CCA is circa, otherwise right. Okay, well, we're getting there. In the first circle, yes, that's it. Pines with 0. Thank you so much. In the first circle. And Dostoevsky, is that right? Is it Dostoevsky? Who's the author on that? Little help. Anyone? Jamie? Jamie. George, my wife is Romania. She was at the protest as a teenager to get this guy out of office. Boy, they got him out of office with a bullet to the head. But that's how that stuff ends when you rule like that. You often end with, Jesus said, if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Yep, in the first circle. Excellent. Guys, I apologize. Like I'm mentally struggling, I guess. Both gives me headaches. So not drinking it and drinking it. Have coffee or don't. Yeah, I'm with you. This feels like an AA meeting right now. Hi, everyone. My name is Mike. And you're supposed to, hi, Mike. That's right. Solzhenitsyn. That's right. Solzhenitsyn. Very good. Yeah, when I said Dostoevsky, I thought, no, that's not right. But I don't know why. I got to imagine after a while you get a little low blood sugar, and between that and the heat, and it's also the weekend. Maybe the fact that I haven't had a drink, I'm just struggling. I don't know. I don't think that's the case. It's been a good discussion, though. I've enjoyed kind of the talk. I think that there's just so much good in the world, and there's so much good that can be done. And I'm not one of these guys that's like, just go out and be nice to your neighbors. Don't worry about. I mean, the world's a mess, and it bothers me. And I think it should bother people. I think if you're a person of a righteous heart, I think it should bother us. But on the other hand, I don't want to let the world dictate to me who I can be. I want to live life on my own terms. It's one of the reasons I want to get off of some of these drugs. I want to get off of tobacco, nicotine, alcohol, and so on, because I want to be free, and I want to produce the best work I can. And sometimes like I'd sit down to write in the evening, I pour myself a drink, and I'm a lightweight, like 1 or 2 drinks. So 1 drink and I'm tired. 2 drinks and I'm feeling pretty good. 3 drinks, I'm everybody's best friend, like I'm silly. The 3 drinks and I'm just like over the top. So I just thought every time I have a drink, I can't think as well. Although you'd think I'm drinking now the way I'm not able to come up with authors and book titles. But I just struggle to produce, and I want to be free of these things that I can produce. I think because of the world we live in right now, and I think because of where I am in my age, I'm realizing like there's only so much time, and there's important work to do. And I want to be a contributor. I want to be a producer. Yes, I enjoy consuming. I'll continue to do that. I want to recreate. I'll continue to do that and enjoy things that bring pleasure and fulfillment and joy. But on the other hand, I want to produce. I want to create, and I want to change the world around me on some level, as I think most people do. I know I'm not going to change the world in general, but I want to make an impact. I want to use this life that I have and what's left of it to the best of my ability. And that's part of the reason for some of this stuff. So let's see here. Or actually, first, Pauline says that Jordan Peterson talks about him a lot. Yeah, I can't wait for Jordan Peterson to come back. I know he's making some progress, but he does talk about him a lot. And Pines with Zero, not to gloat, dear AAs, but I tried whatever, but just don't get addicted to stuff. That's good. That's actually good. I think that's, there are people that just don't struggle. And it's funny, some people are like, oh, what's the big deal? Like alcohol's not a big deal, but to other people, like I've never had a problem. Like I've been a drinker since my early 20s, beer and whiskey and so on, scotch, mixed drinks. I love, and I think I love the aesthetic of cocktails and drinking just as much as I love the actual drinking. But I've never found myself like out of control. I've always felt like I could control it. The same with the smoking. I never felt like the smoking got out of control. I was like, I'm, I might be mildly addicted, but I'm not out of control. But on the other hand, there are other people that can't do it. And I think everybody's got a different thing. And I think we need to learn to respect that. MRP Rao says, hi, sir. Well, hello, MRP. Welcome. It's good to have you along. I'm glad you joined the conversation. I hope you're doing great. Neon Banana, hats off, Mike. Caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, that's pretty huge. Well done. Thank you. We'll see how it goes. I know the caffeine and the nicotine, those will be easy. And I think alcohol, I don't want to be in this, like, I have a hard time with this idea, like, well, I'm never going to have a drink again. Never having a smoke again doesn't bother me. Even the idea of never having another cup of coffee or whatever, that doesn't bother me too much, although it was a huge part of my identity for decades and decades. But to get together with a friend and not have a cocktail or a beer, I'm not sure. We'll see where this goes. I don't feel like I was an alcoholic, but I want to get free of it to see if I can do it and see what life will be like. And after 30 days, I'll assess. And maybe I'm not going to make any big announcement or big, I shouldn't say announcement, big determination. I might after 30 days say, let me do another 30 days. I might just keep playing with this till I get to a point where I've made a decision. But yeah. Pauline says, has anyone seen the interview with Peterson? Now, I know his daughter did an interview with him recently, but is there another interview out there with Peterson? If so, I'd like to check it out. She says, yeah, I feel like he needed some time off, and he's taken the best time to be out of the limelight, dodged some crazy times. Yeah, and he has had some struggles. I mean, he got addicted to those prescription drugs, and it's brutal. And it just shows you, too. I mean, I think of all the pressure that he must have been under. I think a lot of people don't understand the pressure, the scrutiny, the traveling all the time, going from country to country on TV shows. And every show, it's not adulation, it's not lionization. They were all hostile. It was attacking him. He had to always be on his best game. Everybody wanted a piece of him. Everybody wanted to be the famous person to take down Jordan Peterson. No one really did, by the way, which is really amazing. And at the same time, it seems to be quite a humble fellow, and I'm really impressed with him. And Pauline, he's your fellow countryman. Kudos to you and to the Canadians. What a gift you've given the rest of the world in Jordan Peterson. And your progressive liberal culture and legal situation actually helped create him. He would have never probably hit the limelight if he didn't have the opportunity to stand up and say, I'm going to live life on my own terms. I'm not going to be forced to say something that I don't want to say. I'm going to respect other people. I'm going to be kind to them. I'm going to be thoughtful towards them, but you don't get to tell me what I can and can't say. This is all about living life on your own terms. This is a great example. Neon Banana, we choose what to focus on. Focus on the good and see more of it. Focus on what's bad and see more of it. Boy, that's the truth. You know, there's a poet, Alexander Pope. He was one of the neoclassical poets. And he has a line that's all is yellow to the jaundiced eye. And I think it's related. It's not exactly what you're saying, but it's related that, you know, when you have jaundice and you look through eyes that are jaundiced, everything looks yellow to you. It has a yellow cast. And I think it's the same thing. If you focus on what's bad and you consume what's bad, you take that into you, everything looks bad. And I'm not one, I want to be realistic. I want to be a realist. I want to be even a little cynical. Like I want to look at the world as realistically and as objectively as I possibly can. But that said, I don't want to sit bathing in the pigsty. I don't need to be covered in mud to know that that's a filthy, muddy mess. I don't want to devolve and lower myself down into it. I want to understand it. I want to know what to do to combat it. And I want to know what I can do to avoid it and help the others around me avoid it and live a life worth living. So let's see. Peterson had a recovery stream with Michaela recently. They saved him in Russia. Yeah, I saw that. I thought that was really interesting. Pines Zero, but what about DMT? Oh, Pauline says, what about DMT? Yeah. And then Pines Zero responds, so in jiu-jitsu, if you use weed, Bob Lazar worked on an alien spacecraft. You guys know Joe too well. And then, of course, microdosing. And anyway, Pines Zero missed it, sorry. She says that Jordan's from Alberta, where she lives. Interesting. She's from Alberta. Although he's been living in Toronto. Is that correct? He teaches in Toronto and lives in Toronto, I think. And then Pines Zero. Usually it worked in his favor. See? So you're saying. Usually it worked in his favor. See? So you're saying. Anyway, I'm losing the thread there. But also I know you guys are having some conversations between yourselves as well. So she says, yeah, he lives in Toronto now. So what's your take on all this? If you guys, I mean, we're towards the end of the stream here. What are we in? We're like almost an hour and 40 minutes in. Oh, this is a great question before I get there. Pines with Zero asked Pauline, do the Alberta locals have an opinion on Jordan Peterson? That's a great question. I'd love to know, like, what do they think of their son, you know, out in the world making a name for himself. And I would wonder too, like, you know, in Alberta, obviously, each area's got its different feel. Each city has its different feel and province. But I'm wondering, you know, what the political and the cultural norms are of Alberta, if they're any different than say a Toronto or a Vancouver. Pines with 0. Kathy Newman interview was her only line was, "So you're saying," that's right. I got you now. Yeah, that Kathy Newman interview was brutal. It was awesome. I mean, and he actually apologized a little bit afterwards. I mean, I don't think that he was wrong in the way that he approached it. I don't think he was rude to her. He got a little, he played a little bit of her game back at her, and that's that really lovely Canadian sensibility of like, that's not necessary. But I think he handed her ass and her hat, which I thought was fantastic. And she deserved it. I mean, I think again, when you come as a journalist to someone like a Jordan Peterson and your only objective is to destroy them publicly, shame on you. You're not entering into this to have any intellectual discussion. You don't want to do any investigative work. I mean, no matter what he would say, he could say, "I think women are great." And then she'd say, "So you're saying that you feel that women should be just the possession of the men of this world?" I mean, she just had an agenda. It was just so obvious. And that's, I think, what makes it so easy. I think if somebody came in there that really wanted to have more of an intellectual debate and meet him on his own terms, on his own ground, and really wrestle with some of those ideas, first of all, I think he would respect that person. Secondly, I think it would maybe put him off his game a little bit. He's so used to deflecting the BS and just going for the gold that you wonder if somebody came in with a little bit more depth and a little bit more finesse and said, "Hey, if they do better against him," leading to something interesting. So Pauline says, "Most people I know love Jordan, but he doesn't tout his birthplace much." Yeah, he doesn't. I wonder why that is. I had no ideas from Alberta. I don't think he's ashamed of it. It just doesn't seem to come up. Pines 0. I think Jordan admitted to handling the gotcha moment better. Don't know if he apologized. He did reach out to Kathy afterwards to redo an interview, but she refused. Yeah, probably isn't wise of her. But, I think that shows that he's the bigger person. I think it takes a lot of strength to say, "Hey, I'm not proud of the way I did this thing, and I'm willing to publicly say that, and I'm willing to publicly redo this if you like." The fact that she refused shows that she's not big enough. And, she doesn't, she's like demanding to be at the table based on her gender. And I think she's demonstrating that she doesn't deserve to be at the table, not because of her gender, but because of her character. I don't think that Kathy Newman's got the character to be at the table with Jordan. Jordan has demonstrated it doesn't matter what his gender is. It doesn't matter what his sex is. He's got the character to be at the adults table, and she does not have the character to be there. And that's what people need to get over. It is about your character. It is about the substance of who you are. It is not about your sex. It is not about your skin color. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. I said this to somebody. I was having this discussion with somebody. They're going on and on about, and this is a female, about white males, how terrible, and being a woman, it's so hard. And I just said to her, nobody cares that you're a woman. Do you know that? Nobody cares. Now, if she took that to mean nobody cares about you because you're a woman, and I tried to say, no, that's not what I'm saying. See, this is the problem. You're viewing yourself through your womanhood. But at the end of the day, most people want to accept you just for being a person. They want to know what you've accomplished. They want to know what your character is like. They want to know what your personality is like. If you're fun to be around, if you're a kind and gracious and giving person, they don't care if you're male or female. They just say, this is a great person. And if you're not those things, they're not going to want to be around you. It has nothing to do with the fact that you're a female. Yes, I understand sometimes you have to work harder. I understand like you've got some disadvantages. I'm not saying those don't exist, but I was trying to say to this person, nobody cares what your sex is. I mean, sure, if someone's attracted and interested in you, then your sex matters. But the average person that meets you on the street, the average coworker, the average manager isn't going, well, I like to promote this person, but they're a woman, and you can't promote women because no one thinks like that. They don't. They just don't. I mean, I say no one. There are people. They're the minority. They're an exception. The average person is not caring about your skin color or your sex. But of course, when I said that was outrageous. And I think Kathy Newman is one of these people. It's like, you've got to respect me because I am a woman. It's like, no, I only respect you if your character is great, if your contribution is great, you've got my respect. Even if I don't agree with you, there are political opponents, there are ideological opponents that I respect them because of their character. They're honest. They're intellectually honest. They're saying, no, this is what I believe, but I get this. I understand that. I take responsibility for these things. Okay, I can respect that totally because you've got good character. You might be wrong intellectually. You might be wrong politically. You might not make it in the dictatorship that is Mike's glorious kingdom. But I'll be kind to you because you were at least honest and you had good character. Oh my gosh. Just don't ruffle my feathers and we'll be fine. Where are we here in the comments? Michael. Or let's see. Pauline says, I know the phrase, a prophet is not welcome in his own home, in his hometown, and I imagine that's true to a degree, but he is so humble that I don't know anyone here that really dislikes him. Maybe just indifferent. By the way, I just got a note that, holy smokes, I'll just add this to the broadcast. Neon Banana just super chat for $22.99. Well said, Mike. Neon, thank you so much. That's I'm kind of speechless. If you want me to rant like that all the time, brother, let me know. I'll just keep doing it. But thank you. That's really humbling, and I'm grateful for that. That means a ton to me. Just the fact that you're here, first of all, I want to be very clear. It means so much. But to receive that super chat, you're really putting your money on the table, saying that I'm creating some value for you, and that means a lot. So thank you very much, and I'm very grateful. And you did that for me before a while back, and it just means a lot. So thank you. So yes. George says he really liked the book, The 12 Rules of Life from Jordan Peterson. I have not read it. I feel like I should, but I have not read it. But I've heard a lot of young guys talk about it and say really great things. Pines with Zero. The problem is that when your media is dying due to the internet and you solved it by basing your business model around rage bait content, authentic information doesn't tend to sit well. I agree. And I think the other side of it is we get addicted to the dopamine hit from the rage bait. So you give me the rage bait, I take it, I go crazy. It makes me feel good even though I'm angry. It just tickles a certain genetic disposition. And it's this kind of, I'd say virtuous cycle, but it's not virtuous, but it's a cycle. And then I want more. And so you just keep giving me more. And this whole problem with people watching this stuff. Pines with Zero says, there you go, mansplaining. That's right. I know what it's like to be a woman. Just ask me. You guys don't see me in a dress after, I love to put on a nice chiffon dress after that. I shouldn't even joke about that. That'll be great. That's a great sound bite. When I run for office, they'll use that against me. So George is like, so you're not reading White Fragility? No, I'm not reading White Fragility. When all this, it's funny. I follow people like employees from my old agency, folks that used to work for me. Follow some of these people on Twitter and Instagram, so on. You build these relationships. And when the whole Black Lives Matter thing hit, this guy, nice kid, good dad, good husband, hard worker, very, very talented art director. When it hit, I'm reading White Fragility, and I think he got it from his church. We're going to read this book, and I feel so terrible about my whiteness. And so I just thought, dude, this is not the answer. Now, that's not my business, and I'm not going to say your name, but if you're watching this, who you are. I respect that. Read any book you want to read, but it's like this is just this mainstream BS monologue. I would say go back to the sources. You want to get a perspective on human nature, read scripture. You want to read the classics. Read the classics of Western civilization. We're living in the West. If you weren't living in the West, I wouldn't say don't bother, but go to the classics, go to the sources, go to the things that have built our society. Yeah, you can talk about how racism and institutional and all the way back to the Greeks, it's terrible. Learn to think for yourself. You don't need to read White Fragility to know what's going on in the world around you. Pines with Zero, you went all Martin Luther King Jr., the content of their character. Yes, well, I have a dream. I do have a dream. Pauline says, I listened to the 12 Rules on Audible. Jordan reads it himself, and it's powerful to hear. I do these business trips. I'm actually doing one on tomorrow. I hit the road. I've got a 5-hour drive. I'm going to be out of town for a week. And I often will listen to podcasts. I don't do books on tape, but I've thought about Audible and some books like that. Books that I wouldn't necessarily take the time to read, but would be nice just to listen to understand what they're all about. So... Pines for Zero, it's moral high ground by proxy. Yeah, very good. Yep. Let's see. Pauline says, White Fragility is a thing. I thought you were joking. No, it's a book. There's a book. It's a book, and it's written by a white woman. It's great. It's she's a hack. She's a total hack. I'm sure she's like got her PhD in gender studies. It's just like the biggest con job of the decade. It's of the century. It's this whole race war thing. Does anybody notice, by the way, race relations got really bad when Obama took office? And it was the exact opposite of what I thought was going to happen. I did not vote for Obama the first time or the second time, but the first time he won, I knew he was a progressive, so on. When he won, I thought, you know what? Okay, good. Look, I'm going to put my political leanings aside. I'm not voting for him. I'm going to vote for who I believe is better for the country. But maybe it's time. I'm glad for America that we're able to put a black man in office. I thought that was remarkable. Forget all the other stuff about him that I found really troubling. That he was tutored by one of the members of the Weather Underground, mentored by this guy, that he, go on and on and on. Forget all that stuff. I thought, you know what, good for America that we were able to come together and put a black man in office. And I went on record publicly with employees, with family members, just publicly. I just said, I'm rooting for him. I want him to do well. I want him to do well because when he does well, we do well. I don't want him to get everything he wants. He's a progressive. I want him to do well as a president. I want this to be a good thing for us. And man, oh man, did it not go so well. I mean, it was the most divisive, rancorous 8 years leading up to what I thought at the time was it couldn't get worse. Of course, under Trump, it's been way worse. And you can blame Trump for that, or you can blame his haters or whoever. I'm not going to take that into consideration right now. But the fact is, I was surprised at how divided we became as a nation under Obama, because I expected just the opposite. But yeah. So White Fragility is the #1 bestseller in the U.S. at the moment. Crazy. That's George. And Pines with Zero says, yeah, it's an amazing book. If you're into train wrecks, no doubt. George, Ben Shapiro did a great video on the White Fragility book. I saw that. He kind of broke it down argument by argument. I thought he did a great job on that as well. And, and he wasn't snarky, nasty. I mean, he brought his points to the table, but he was pretty good at breaking that down. Pauline says, can I just get the cover of White Fragility and put it on the watch, put the Watchman behind it when I'm out in public reading? Oh, Pauline, that's classic. That's great. Yes, you can do that. You know what? That's still legal. No one can stop you from doing that. Absolutely. George says, check out 7 Reasons Why White Fragility is the worst book ever on YouTube. Yeah, that's the Ben Shapiro bit. And Pauline, I believe the Obama hype at first too. Yeah, that's fair. Lots of people did. I never believed the hype. And I don't know what you meant by that. I never really believed the hype. I never got caught up. It's just when he won, and McCain was terrible. McCain was a terrible. I didn't like McCain. But anyway. When McCain lost and Obama won, I just thought, okay, fine. Like, I don't want this guy in the office. He's a total progressive. I think his policies are going to be bad. But on behalf of Black America, on behalf of the country in general, on behalf of the history of slavery, which was abolished 150 some odd years ago, but it's great. Let's see what the nation can do with an African American, with a true African Kenyan American president, and it's just very disappointing. I think he totally missed an opportunity to be big and to be healing and to be uniting, and instead he was small and divisive and petty and very partisan. Too bad. Okay, Pines Zero says, it's 11 p.m. here, so it's time for Odd Topics, at least for me. Where do you fall on Yuri Bezmenov? Do you think he was right, or did nothing come out of what he warned about? Now, are you talking about hypernormalization? Are you talking about Yuri with hypernormalization? And I think the 4 stages of how the Russians were going to undo American society. Just confirm that for me, and then I'll tell you what I think. So, because I think that's who you're talking about. Pauline says the yes we can, the optimism for a fresh start. Yeah, I think we all wanted that. I had some concerns about that just because it struck me a little bit like the not the Hitler Youth, but there was a kind of almost religious fervor around that. Yes, we can. But I get it. It is encouraging that optimism. People want optimism. People want hope and change. And he gave us change. He didn't give us any hope, that's for sure. Okay, so Pines with Zero says, yes, that's right. Now, I'm going to have to shoot from memory. So guys, forgive me. So Pines with Zero is asking about, there was a Russian dissident. It was a guy that got out of Russia. And just jump in, George, or Pines with Zero, and correct anything that I'm not saying correctly here. This goes back a ways. Got out of Russia. This would be back in the 80s. And he kind of got known. He was living in America. He's probably a professor, intellectual, and he was just talking about these 4 stages of the Soviets had kind of a plan, and it was kind of like an ideological Marxism. And what they wanted to do was to disrupt. I'd have to look it up. I don't know the 4 stages, but essentially they wanted to kind of deconstruct and disrupt American society and create such a sense of disorientation and dissatisfaction and unrest in the country, but then make that kind of hyper normalized. Like the crazy things, terrorism and protests and neighbors at each other's throats and just the American way of life, like in the trash can, that just becomes normal. And it gets to the point where the truth, you don't know what's the truth anymore. Everything's just the media's lying, everybody's manipulating. And meanwhile, these really powerful people are kind of molding and shaping the world the way they want it to go. And so let me just read a couple things here. So Pi Zero says, by rule of thumb from CEE, people who promised new starts weren't big on fixing running yet functional systems. Yeah, that's right. So that's so George says Obama equals Hillary equals Bill equals Bush equals McCain equals Bush Senior equals all the same. All right, so this Yuri was an ex-KGB propagandist. Thank you. That's good to know. He was the son of a general. And so what Pi Zero is saying, well, what I think about him, I think if you look at and I wish I was more articulate about Yuri, but here's my strong belief. If you look at today, if you look at the world around us, he was dead on. He was dead on. Now, I used to have another channel. It may still be up. I'm not even going to tell you what the channel is, but I was doing these kind of videos. You wouldn't see my face. I just did a voiceover to some images. And, oh, I want to tell you so bad, but I'm not going to tell you. But I thought I did a video on hypernormalization in Yuri. I thought I did. I can't remember. But this would have been a couple years ago. And it's probably still up somewhere. I don't know if I'd share it publicly, but I might share it privately somehow. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, I totally agree. I think that Yuri was right. I think it's a shame that we're not talking about him and his predictions more in the mainstream, because I think they've come true. I think we're seeing exactly this. Now, I don't think that it's necessarily just the Russians. I think there are Marxists. It's Marxism, and it's the Hegelian dialectic, this kind of, you've got to create fights between groups, and that these battles, these conflicts and confrontations between these groups create this new society, supposedly utopia down the road, but it doesn't. It just destroys everything. It's like a cancer. And so we've got ideological Marxism, we've got political Marxism, social Marxism, economic Marxism. We've got it's mainstream in America. I mean, the Democrat Party is becoming just an out-and-out Marxist party. Black Lives Matter, Marxist, tied to the Democrats. Bernie Sanders, he's a Marxist. I'm a socialist. You're a Marxist. AOC, Marxist. I mean, you can't. They're not hiding it anymore. Your professors, your big tech leaders, Silicon Valley, Marxists. And I think that Yuri was 100% right. And I think you're seeing it. I don't know how you can't see it. So, yeah, you have to check it out. Yeah, I'm sorry for teasing you guys. I know. I just, it's like this channel is supposed to be more about living life in your own terms, entrepreneurship, so on. And here I am, like I'm into DMT, and we're talking about Yuri Bezmenov, or however you say his name, and hypernormalization and so on. So yeah, I wish I could give you guys more at this. We'll get into stuff more often, but George wants to know, do you know Peter Schiff? You would like his thinking. I do not know Peter Schiff, but I can write his name. Now, that name actually sounds familiar. Now, I'm wondering if his name came up before, but I'll just write his name down here real quick in my notes, and I'll look him up afterwards. Let's see, Peter Schiff. Guys, I got to tell you, I'm kind of glad I hung around instead of just ending the podcast and then saying goodbye to everybody. It's been a fun conversation. Pauline says, you look around enough and someone has predicted almost everything. Imagine, like Simpsons episodes. That's true. But this Yuri guy, I'm telling you, Pauline, you should check him out. Very interesting. There's some interesting footage of him teaching some of the stuff back in the 80s, and it's fascinating. And Pi says he, by rule of thumb, oops, I clicked on the wrong thing here. George says he was on Joe Rogan a couple of times. This is Peter Schiff we're talking about. Guys, we're about 2 hours in. I should probably wrap this podcast up. It's been so good talking to you guys. Again, a special thanks to Neon Banana. I appreciate that donation. That just means so much to me. And also, guys, everybody, I'm grateful. I say this every time. I really mean it. I wish I could meet you guys face to face. I love you guys. I'm really grateful for you being here. I'm grateful for your friendship and for your for this community. I love the conversations, and if you want to give me feedback, if you're saying, Mike, I kind of wish we talk more about this kind of topic or that kind of topic, hit my website. You can just send me a message through the website. You can find my email address; it's right there. But there's a comment form. Just send me an email. Tell me who you are. Tell me you are on the stream from time to time, and share with me. And I'd love to accommodate. I just think it's always helpful to know what's on your minds. I like to just get up here and talk, but I want to know what you're into as well. All right, so you're going to go talk to your family. Heard they're nice people. Well, thank you. Tell your family thank you for allowing you to spend time with me, Pi. I appreciate it. And yeah, man, thanks. I appreciate you as well. Guys, I love you all, and I hope you have a fantastic week. I'll catch you in the next video. Take care.